Hey, day traders. This is Marina, the Trader Chick via Toro. So, what'd you think of day trading, huh? Is it starting to make a lot more sense to you? Yeah, day trading is definitely a journey. You have to take it step by step. And that's the fun part of it, right? Learning one small step at a time. So before we go any further, I want to give you more of a background of who I am, how I got into day trading. So I'll kind of make it as short as I can. I was born in the USSR back when it was still a communist country, and I moved to the United States when I was 6 years old. We moved to New York, and I pretty much grew up, like a typical US kid. Then we moved to the suburbs after we moved from New York City. And then I had to do the same thing as all my other friends did. I had to go to university, even though I had no idea what I wanted to do. I think 18 years old can be a little bit too young to be pushing people who don't know what they want to do. But, anyways, I ended up going to university. I actually ended up transferring 5 times, graduated on time with a tourism degree, which really doesn't make any sense for anything. However, during that time of my life, I did get to travel. I did a study abroad program and I lived in London, which was an eye opener for me. And I was totally hooked on travel. And I knew that somehow my life had to revolve around having travel as part of my everyday life, right? Or just it became a part of me. I didn't really know what to do, so I traveled. I ended up living cross country all over the United States for a couple of years. I was a ski bunny, a surf. I don't think you call them surf bunnies, but during my time of living across the United States for a couple of years, I became a fitness instructor. I was actually always very passionate about fitness, and it gave me a lot of flexibility. So I ended up becoming a fitness instructor. I moved back to New York City and was actually quite successful fitness instructor in Manhattan. And it was really fun. But during that time, because of being a fitness instructor, I had a lot of free time as well. So the great thing about fitness instructors is you work super early in the morning, lunchtime, and then dinner time, right when market hours for the financial markets are really dead. So I had the free time when the markets were booming to actually start to find out my passion about. That was my other passion, was the financial markets. And that's how I got involved in it. When I lived in New York, I was in my early 20s, and I started going to all these different financial market workshops, a lot of day trading workshops. And back then, Wall Street was just hot. It was before the 2008 boom, crash, I should say. So everything was booming and beaming. And a lot of the courses I went to were ridiculously expensive after the free workshop that they offer, or the minimal, like the $20 you paid for a workshop. And they all were telling us the same story, that you needed $25,000 to start before even paying for their products. So it kind of really put me on edge. And I never fully went after it because I was scared. I didn't have that kind of money. It wasn't a very inviting field for me, but I knew that I really wanted to do it, yet I didn't know how it was going to happen. So at that point, I kind of put it on my back burner. When I was 27 years old, I decided to travel. It was my time now to travel. I actually just put on a backpack, said goodbye to my family and my friends, and headed south. I headed south to Mexico. I went cross country US, south to Mexico. And in Mexico, I really wanted to learn Spanish. And everybody was constantly telling me, oh, Guatemala is the most cheapest country in the world for Spanish lessons, right? I mean, I heard of Guatemala, but I never met any Guatemalans. I didn't know anything about it. But I was like, hey, why not, right? So as I crossed the border from Belize to Guatemala, within a couple of hours, I was in one of the most beautiful Mayan ruins of the Mayan route, called Tikal. And I was in this tiny little cabin in their campsite. And right next to me was this Guatemalan guy who spoke perfect English and started to follow me around. And well, here we are 15 years later. We've been married. I have 2 kids with him now. We moved to Costa Rica, and now we live in Guatemala. During my time in Costa Rica, he was a student. So that's when my firstborn was arrived, my first son. And I had some time. I had time to get back into what I really wanted, which was always the financial markets. And at that point, this was now almost 12 years ago, there was really very little about the stock market, about the financial markets, about, and all of this in general, right? So I didn't really know what to do. Day trading, which is something that I've always had an interest in, was almost impossible to find online that was easily to understand. But I was able to find stuff and completely self-teach myself how to invest in the markets, mainly in the stocks and EFTs. So but that's long-term investing, right? It didn't require me, after the education, it didn't require me to sit every day like I do now with day trading. So during that time, while I was finding investments and whatnot, I also had a lot of other time, and I became a travel writer. Actually, I just started a travel blog about our lives in Costa Rica, our traveling in Costa Rica with my family, something that didn't exist at that time on the internet at all. And it became really popular. It actually took a life of its own and began to grow organically to the point where it became my full business. And once again, I put my financial investment ideas and education to the side because I love travel. Travel has always been a super passion for me. And here I am being a travel writer, running my own blog, working for myself and traveling completely through my website. And it was fantastic, right? So during that time when my site was booming, we were traveling a lot. We moved to Guatemala because my husband got a job here. Guatemala, if you are not a self-employed person, it's really difficult for you to get really good work, even if you're very highly educated, as my husband is. But he wanted to become a doctor as in a PhD. So he decided that he wants to get a PhD, and we were supposed to move to Santiago, Chile. Right when he quit his job and went to Santiago, Chile, something happened with the travel industry. This was several years ago now. This was almost 5 years ago. Something happened with the travel industry. My business almost came to a halt. And at that point, I was the one going to be carrying my family entirely on my shoulders for living, basically. And all of a sudden, my husband is already in Santiago, and we find out that Santiago is almost as expensive as living in Manhattan. But on top of that, the schools there are really bad. So you need to send your children to private school, which are like 20 to 30 grand each. I have 2 kids at this point. And the decision was really strong at this point. You know, it's like, do I go sacrifice myself? Because at this point, my travel business, which was super certain for, at that point, 7 years, became completely uncertain. And so moving to Santiago with having no real money coming in anymore and paying these enormous bills, I made the decision that while my husband is studying there, which is going to be another 3 years, to stay in Guatemala where I can afford life, even if my business isn't booming. And this was crossing, I guess, like crossing the roads for me. That's when I said, I'm either going to work for somebody else or I'm going to invest my time right now and the little money that I have and do what I've always wanted to do other than trading, and that's learn to day trade. And 5 years ago, there was plenty of opportunities out there. However, they are still, I find them, they are not very easy to understand. For beginners, if you are kind of mildly interested, you will be deterred instantly. The obstacles are big because the language is different. It's a very aggressive industry where you don't get a lot of help from people because it's all about, if you can't do it, then don't even try. And that's not true. Well, at this point, I felt like that, but I knew that it's something I wanted. It's something that I've wanted for so long that I said, screw it, I'm doing it, right? So I decided that moment that we're not moving, me and my kids aren't moving to Santiago, we're staying, and I started my day trading education and my journey. And it was really difficult. It was the most challenging experiences of my entire life. And I have to admit that more than half of it probably did not have to happen if it was easier for me to find the beginnings, the basics. What was about market? I didn't even understand, when you jump into any academy, because you need an education for day trading. Think of it this way. You are about to earn a lot of money. There is not a single profession out there in the world that you could just go in and throw your money at and think you're going to make it. And with day trading, you can, because there's no barriers. There's no one telling you, no, you can't get in. You don't know what you're doing. Oh, you've got cash, so come on in, right? So you need an education, whatever that education may be. You could be self-taught, which is just really time consuming. And I found that you end up losing money anyways when you go into the live market because you don't have a strategy. You need an educator. However, when you do find an educator, a lot of them already think you're at a level that passes the total beginners, like they talk about the market movements, the trends, the different indicators, as if though you know about those things, and you don't. And they're really tough to understand. And a lot of the academies I found are 3 to 6 months. So in 3 to 6 months, you're paying for the service, and they're expecting you to, well, they're telling you, I don't think they're expecting you to do anything. They're telling you that you're gonna be live and working. Yeah, maybe if you've already entered knowing that, the market moves up, there's trending markets, the market moves up, it moves down, it moves sideways, there's divergences, there's reversal patterns, there's support, there's resistance. There's all these terms. And not only are they terms, but you have to understand, you have to know what they are. So it's kind of like music. If you sit down at a piano, and they say, okay, here's a Mozart sonnet, go for it and play. And you don't even know, the first notes like do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, D, or, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, as we do in the US. You don't know what they look like. You don't have any idea what they sound like. And then on top of that, the scales, because you have to learn how to do the scales to even understand how the music works. So it's the same thing with day trading, right? When you enter the academies, a lot of times they overpass that beginner part. And that was the biggest challenge for me. That, and also understanding a platform, realizing that I need to work with a platform. None of this was explained to me. None of this was helped. I ended up doing this all on my own. And a lot of other people that I've started to talk with had similar challenges. And because of that, and what also happens is when you enter these academies, you're already jumping in where there are students that have been there for years, or the teachers have been teaching for years and trading for years, but it sounds like they're, at one point they just jumped right in and they just did it. And you feel compelled to do so yourself, even though you don't have a solid background. You don't understand fully that the market moves in this particular manner, or that it's going to do such a thing, right? So you get anxious and you jump in on your own, and you lose. You will lose. You will lose when you do this, right? This was such a huge, huge, monumental challenge for me. Once I got past like the basics, once I woke up and I'm like, wait, none of this was necessary. If there was just somebody who gave me the 101s from the start, the super beginner information, I would have cut so much of my time, so much of my losses out. I would, and then also these misconceptions about, that it's stressful and that you have to, trade tons all the time and you have to do all of this. You have to jump in and be a shotgun trader. None of these are true, right? But they sound good. So when you're doing these classes, it sounds good to be in every valid trade, whatever that means, right? So that's when I realized, wait, none of this is true. And I woke up. It took me almost 2 years to realize this. And I woke up, and that's when my trading changed remarkably. First of all, now I am a conservative trader. I look only for the best. I compare myself to like a sniper, even though I don't believe what snipers do, but snipers have this patience. They will never start shooting at, somebody that might be their, focal point, their target. They have this patience, this serious discipline. And that's what is necessary in a day trader. But most importantly is because they know what they're looking for. When you know what you are looking for, the patience, it doesn't feel like patience anymore because, oh wait, none of those trades look good for me. You know what the green lights are. You know what the red lights are. Your risk is in place. All those components, all those elements put together is what makes a trader a real trader. And it doesn't happen unless you start from the beginning, from the very beginning. And that's what I am here right now to talk to you about. I now have the Beginners Bootcamp for Day Trading.